All right, now let's do something similar for the trip. So right now we can edit and delete a note, but let's make it so we can edit and delete a trip. So if we go back into our code, we close the terminal, we go back into our views.py. This is going to be very similar to what we just did for the note update view and the note delete view. So if you want to pause this and take a stab at creating the trip update view and the trip delete view, go ahead. Otherwise, we're going to continue on now and just create two more classes. So we'll have a class for the trip update view, which will inherit from the update view that we get from Django. And again, we'll specify the model equals a trip this time. The success URL equals reverse lazy, so that we can use the URL names, and then we'll say trip/list. And then the fields, again, with the trip, we don't want all the fields because we don't want the owner field to be selected. So we'll say city, country, start date, every single time, start underscore date, all lowercase, start date, and then end underscore date. And again, this will use a template named model underscore form. So trip underscore form, which we already have. And we don't need to override the form for this because we're not limiting any kind of selection. We're just not even going to show the owner field because it's already created. And so then we'll make next our delete view. So we'll add another class. This will be trip delete view, which will inherit from that delete view we imported. And then all we specify here is the model equals trip and the success URL. So after successfully deleting an object, let's go reverse lazy and send them to the trip list page. So we can save that. So that's our views set up for update and delete. Let's update and add the URLs. So we can duplicate this trip detail view twice. We can first make it similar to the update and delete for the note. We can add one that's for an update, and I'll just add this as a delete below. And then instead of trip detail view, we want trip update view like that. And we need to import it from our view. And then this will be trip dash update as the name. And for the delete, we want the trip delete view. And again, we need to import that from our views file. And then this, instead of note detail, is note. And then this right here, instead of our so move back to before I updated this file. So, all right, so to create these URLs, we're just going to use this trip detail view and duplicate it twice. We'll come up here for the first one and make it an update and make this one below it delete. Then for the update, it will be trip update view, which we need to import from our views file up there. And then instead of trip detail, it'll be trip update. And below it, for deleting, it'll be trip delete view. And again, we want to import this from our view that we just created. And then instead of trip detail, trip delete. And then finally, like before, let's just update our template for our trip detail so that we can add buttons to edit and delete. So again, like before, right inside of these trip details, right below the trip detail header, I'm just going to paste in some code. So first we have a link tag, which takes us to the trip update page, and it's an edit button. And again, this uses that trip underscore form.html, and then it has some styling so it looks more like a button. And then we have a form here because we need to post this, send a post request to this trip delete with the trip PK in order to delete that trip. So we include the CSRF token since this is a form for security. And then we have our input button that we styled to be like a red button and then have the value of delete. So that's the A link to edit and the form for deleting. So save this and make sure your server's still running. And if we open this up in our browser, and we go over to My Trips, and we click on San Diego. Now you can see we can edit or delete the trip. So if we edit the trip, we can update all of these fields. So maybe it's or maybe this was actually Los Angeles. We can save that. Boom, now it's Los Angeles. If we actually don't want to have this trip anymore, we can just delete it. And we don't have the trips. We still have the other trips, Barcelona and Chicago. And if we click on one of those, we can see the notes. Awesome. So now we have a lot of functionality, basically all of the functionality built out. The last few things we're going to add are just some stylistic things, like for making the login and sign up pages a bit better and making it so that the actual homepage right here has a bit of styling. But again, that's just aesthetic. So awesome job on getting this far with this Django project. If you want to continue on, we can make this look a little bit prettier.